All right, what's up, everyone? Coach Braden here with Look Like You Lift and the Look Like You Lift 15 podcast, where we're going to teach you how to look like you lift in 15 minutes. I'm really excited to bring on our guest, Tanner Guzy, who is a men's style expert. And we've spent the past handful of podcasts going over how we can train, how we can live, and how we can eat to look like we lift. And so I wanted to take the podcast in a different direction. I wanted to talk about how we can dress to look like we lift. And so Tanner's the guy for that. He's awesome. And so Tanner, before we kind of get into what we want to talk about today, why don't you go ahead and just give us some insight of who you are and what you do, man?
Yeah. So I am, like you said, men's style expert, men's style coach. I make a living teaching men how to dress like they have some self-respect and they care about themselves. And for you guys who are listening and thinking this means I tell people to wear suits all the time, that's not what I do. We take a much more holistic approach and figure out clothing that works for guys based on what they do for a living, where they live, what their goals are, really the same way that your fitness training should be. In the same way that a boxer should train like a sumo wrestler, not every guy should dress the same way, and we should take a different approach with it too. So I'm actually from Braden's neck of the woods. I'm here in the Intermountain West, a family of five kids, so a family of seven. And yeah, just love getting to do what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It was such a small world to find out that we were pretty much from the same area.
Right.
That's awesome. So Tanner, why don't we kind of get into, I guess the first thing that I wanted to talk about was like, I feel like there's kind of a movement with men that if you care a lot about your image, that you're not a man. Like it's more masculine to not really care about how you look. Do you see that with what you work with?
I get that all the time. In fact, so much so that it's become kind of a running meme that I do on both my Instagram and my Twitter feeds, where I will find examples of historic photos or paintings or things like that that show men who clearly care about the way that they dress. And spoiler alert, guys, the men who cared the most about their appearance were always the warrior class of any society. So arguably the most masculine men were also the ones that were the most concerned with their aesthetics. And so I'll find these photos and then I'll just post in quotes, but real men don't care how they look, because this is a very like time specific post sexual revolution, very kind of boomer era mindset in the West. And you look at any other point in history with any other group of people, and men have always been concerned about appearance because it signals things. It signals status and authority and credibility and strength and honor and mastery and all these things that we as men care about and we need to understand from each other.
I love that. So what are some of the benefits that a man can get from dressing like they actually care about themselves and how they actually present themselves to the world?
So there's two big reasons that this benefits you. The first one that most guys think about is it makes it so that I create a good first impression, or that I'm more congruent in how I send signals to other people. That leads to better job opportunities. It leads to better dates or a better relationship. It can lead to better parenting because your kids have a different level of respect for you. And most guys tend to focus on that being like 80% of the value. And then the second aspect of it is it changes the way that you perceive yourself. And where most guys think that that's 20%, it's really the inverse. That's more like 80%, because, and you guys get this as you've changed the way that you've looked with your physique as you've been building. When you look in the mirror and you see somebody there and you like what you see, you have more self-respect. You see yourself as somebody who's capable of doing hard things. And you see yourself as, well, if I'm good in this arena, then I want to live up to what's being projected. And so I want to improve in other arenas. And again, I expect you guys to have experienced this. This was certainly the case for me. As I started working on my fitness, it doesn't stop there. My self-development then goes to my relationships and my finances and to everything else. And your aesthetics can have that exact same synergistic effect too.
That's incredible. Yeah, because we talk a lot about how improving your fitness and getting stronger has a carryover into your relationships, into your spirituality, into your mental well-being. But it sounds like style does the exact same thing.
Totally.
I love that. So what are some of the steps that when you bring on a new client, let's say that, he wears basketball shorts, and he wears oversized t-shirts, and he really wants to start working on improving his image and how he presents himself to the world. What are some of the first steps that we can start taking to do that?
So there are three main big steps. And the thing that's awesome about this is it applies to everybody. The thing that's frustrating about this is they're such big picture things that in order to really get into how they apply to everybody, you have to dive much deeper on what they are.
Sure.
The first thing is just pure aesthetics. It's knowing things like what does and doesn't fit based on your build, based on your height, based on your proportions, what colors work on you, which ones don't, how to know what neutral colors are so you don't have to think about colors that much, patterns, simple stuff like that.
Mhm.
That's where most guys who do what I do, they stop right there. And that matters. But the next two steps are the bigger ones. The second one is communication. So how do I signal things the way that I want to the people that are around me and that matter? If you really believe that you don't care about your opinion, or you don't care about your style, and that you it doesn't matter to you how you look, then I dare you to go raid your wife or your girlfriend's closet and put on one of her dresses and wear that every day for the next week and tell me that that doesn't affect you, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't make you self-conscious. It doesn't affect the way that other people at work interact with you. And so we have to focus on who are the people that matter, what are the signals that you want to send to them, and then how we use your clothing to send those signals.
Mm.
And then the third step is the authenticity aspect of it that we've hit on a little bit. But what does the best version of you look like? What is the guy that when you see a picture on Instagram and it's you and you go, that guy is totally living my ideal version, what is he wearing? And how do we use that as kind of this intentional placebo so that we dress that way and then we pull the rest of you up to be that way too? And so that's what I go over with my guys, is we focus on those three things, and they're individual for every guy because they live in different places, they're in different relationship statuses, they work in different industries, their values and morals are different. And as you calibrate all those things within those three big pictures, you come out with a very congruent sense of style on the other end.
Sure. Yeah. So me being a strength coach, it's not practical for me to show up wearing a suit, but
No, it's a joke.
yeah, but you can still take care of your image and and how you present yourself without having to wear an Adidas polyester shirt and
Right.
basketball shorts.
Right. And you think about it, I mean, the suit, traditionally we wore it, and the big thing was because it conveyed credibility, authority, status, dependability, trustworthiness. And those are all things that I would imagine as a strength coach, you still want to communicate to your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just have to figure out what are the ways that we can communicate that in a contextually appropriate way that has more to do with strength training than it has to do with being in Wall Street or in a law firm. And so the goal of communicating and expressing those things, that doesn't change. It's just the means to that end. And that's where the focus has to come in.
So it sounds like when we're talking about men's style, it's way more than just piece this t-shirt with this short.
Right.
It's way more like we have to have an intention. What like dressing for an intention is what it sounds like.
Yeah, because it really is. It's like learning to speak a second language,
Mm.
and you can't just say random words that don't mean anything and have no grammatical structure and say, well, at least it sounds pretty, so it's good, from an audible perspective. You have to also focus on what it is that is being expressed and communicated.
Okay. Okay. So let's say that I'm just an average guy. I don't need to dress formal wear to work. Actually, like our work is like, let's say like business casual,
Mhm.
like a button down, or like jeans with a button down. So what would you say some of the steps that we can start taking to improving our style just based off of that? And I want to convey the message of professionalism and credibility. How
Yep.
how would we go about that?
Okay. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see guys make is when they're trying to change their style and they're trying to dress in a way that's different from everybody else. They will focus on either formality, so they will dress more formally than everybody else.
Mhm.
They will wear more colors or brighter colors, or they will wear more or bolder patterns.
Mm.
And that's really kind of where the beginners tend to focus. And more often than not, that doesn't accomplish the job, and it brings more negative attention than what we're after. And so really better places to focus on are wearing things that match the same level of formality where you currently are. Don't dress up, just dress better. And better means find stuff that fits a little bit better, pay a little bit more attention to the quality of the construction, maybe introduce a little bit more texture into what you're wearing.
Mm.
And by just making those subtle changes, people aren't going to be able to quantify why you look better, but they will be able to recognize that you look better. And that goes a long way. I mean, really the goal should be to be killing it in jeans and a t-shirt and sneakers just as much as you are in a three-piece suit. And more often than not, focusing on fit, texture, and quality are going to yield much better results than formality, color, or pattern will.
That's awesome. So I think a big misconception when people want to like look fit, or how we say look like we lift, like
Mhm.
they think of like they have to wear like a skin tight shirt and like super short shorts to show off their quads. What would you say if we're trying to convey the message of, hey, I look like I lift? What would be some of the clothing staples that we should be looking at?
So it's not going to be staples so much as it's going to be how you wear things, because I see this a lot. And I get it, because when you get to the point where you're in great shape, you want to show it off because you've worked really hard for it.
Sure.
And what you don't want to do is you don't want to get to the point where you look one dimensional. Like the only thing that you have going on for you is the fact that you're in great shape, and everything else is sacrificed on that particular altar. And sadly, that's where a lot of guys go. And that's why everything is so skin tight, or they're always in the athleisure. So it always looks like they're either on their way to or from the gym. You don't want to look like your life revolves around the gym. You want to look like this is one thing that you've got dialed in, but then it's one component of many things that you've got dialed in.
This is one thing that kind of drives me nuts is there's I'm not going to name the name, but there's I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a specific men's line that kind of targets toward like the really fit guys, and
Mhm.
it's like it looks like nice patterns and nice clothing, but it's like saran
Right.
wrap to
I
their
don't need to
body.
see your shoulder striations through your button-up shirt, man.
Yeah, like that drives me crazy.
Right. It does. It makes you look like a cartoon character, like you're one dimensional. And so
Yes.
really what we're after is, yes, wear stuff that it still fits the right way in the right areas. The easiest way to do this, you can do this with t-shirts, with Henleys, with polos, with button-up shirts. From your shirt perspective, you want it to be nice and snug in the chest, the shoulders, the traps, and the arms. And then you want a decent amount of drape down through the waist and through the seat. And really, when you think about the ideal masculine V-shape aesthetic, what this looks like when we're doing it with your clothing is, one, you're so jacked and so big up top that you're stretching out your clothing there. And again, we don't need to go like hyper stretchy, but just fill that out,
Mm,
you know, and then you're so tapered that even your shirt that fits relatively slim still is relatively loose against that. And so it creates even more of that illustration or that aesthetic of that taper. And so nice and snug up top, a relative amount of drape down at the bottom. I don't need to see your abs through your shirt, because that's again where you start to look like a cartoon character.
sure.
Yep.
I really like that image that you just portrayed, and I find that I like the t-shirts that do that, where I have the drape, and I haven't even noticed it before. So
Mhm.
is there, I mean, do you have like a suggestion or recommendation where we can start looking for those types of shirts, like either like a brand or somewhere we can look?
Yeah, yeah. My favorite brand for these guys, for especially for Henleys and for these types of t-shirts, is a company called Buck Mason. Um, Another brand that this is actually, he's a competitor of yours as far as being a content creator, but Greg O'Gallagher from Kino Body.
Mm,
He started a clothing line called Kino Clothing, and I partnered up with him on that. And this was a very specific conversation that he and I had over months to get the t-shirts and the Henleys designed so that they would have this exact kind of drape. And
mhm.
so even if you're not buying his programs or doing that stuff, his clothing line is going to be phenomenal in that regard. So I recommend him on that for sure.
That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Buck Mason and then Kino Clothing.
Hmm.
Okay. I think it's super cool that you've partnered with Greg.
Yeah, he's a good dude. I like Greg.
Yeah, we have very polar opposites as far as like philosophies are concerned, but I got to give him credit. He knows what he's doing.
Yep.
Okay, so cool. So we've talked about the top. What about the bottoms?
Basically, same thing. You want to have it be slim enough that I have a natural idea of what kind of shape you're in, but
Mm,
you don't want to see every single detail. And so this is where, and guys, the thing that's frustrating about this is these terms that we hear like baggy or slim or skinny or all of that, they're all nebulous. They don't mean anything. You can buy one thing that's a slim fit from one brand and that's a skinny fit from another brand, and they
mm,
fit the same way. And so you can't look at these terms objectively, but ideally what you want, let's say that there is kind of a skinny, slim, baggy spectrum. You want to be on the slim side of it. You don't want to be so hyper skinny that it looks like, again, we got to see the teardrop in your calves, but you don't want it to be so baggy that it looks like I have no idea if you lift or not at all. You just want it to follow your natural lines without giving away any details. And so a decent slim fit is going to work for that. For most of you guys, you're going to have an easy time with really kind of any brand. For jeans, Levi's, their 514 has kind of their athletic taper that works really well.
mm.
And then for you guys who are really jacked, and you especially you've got like the big squatter seat and all of that, there's a company that caters specifically to you called Barbell Apparel,
Mm.
and they make stuff that fits really well based on what your unique problems with too big of thighs and too big a seat in comparison to everything else are going to be.
I've found, so I'll just kind of be a little selfish here. So I have the problem where my thighs are disproportionately large to the rest of my body.
Yeah.
And so, barbell parallel works really well, but I've also found, I don't know if you've seen this too, but American Eagle has come out with a line of jeans that have like the stretchy material,
Oh, uh-huh.
and they work really well of being able to fit the seat and fit the thigh without having to be completely saran wrapped around your skin.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Okay, so now we have kind of a good build here for the top, the bottom. What about footwear?
The only thing that I can say from a footwear perspective, because again, it's so context dependent. Maybe you should be
Sure.
wearing sneakers. Maybe you should be wearing loafers. Maybe you should be wearing boots. Like there's so many different ways to do it right. But the one thing that I would tell you that most guys get wrong is do not wear your gym shoes with jeans or with shorts or anything that isn't actually gym apparel. Like if it's your nobles or your metcons or whatever it is that you've got on, don't wear those with this stuff because it's incongruent. It's kind of like throwing a tie on with a t-shirt. The
So I shouldn't
disparity between them is too strong.
so I shouldn't wear my 5 fingers with my jeans.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. I am leaving this show right now. Doesn't mean you can't wear sneakers, but it does mean that you want to go a little bit more kind of like classic and old school with your sneakers. And so maybe this is like Nike Air Maxes, the Air Max 90s, or the Internationalists, or maybe it's the New Balance 247s, or your Adidas Stan Smiths, or anything that was a sneaker that people were wearing back in like the 70s and the 80s, but has enough staying power. That is moved out of being a gym only shoe into a regular standard everyday wear type of shoe. And that's the kind of stuff that you want to wear if you're taking the sneaker approach.
That's awesome. That's great. I think we've really put together a good kind of staple that we can use, for the majority of men. So you have a book, The Appearance of Power.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what that book is about and kind of give us some context what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, it's a book that's detailing the idea that men have always cared about appearance, that we've always used our aesthetics to signal our masculinity. And so for the first third of it, I walk through a bunch of different historical examples, whether that's the reason why the Spartans wore red cloaks or why in German universities, scars from dueling swords were considered to be high value and chicks dug that, and kind of everything in between. And then from there, it starts to break into, okay, how does this translate to you into your life? And what are the big strategies that we have to look at in order to create a very intentional sense of style and one that helps you accomplish these bigger goals of improving your health, gaining more wealth, improving your relationships, and how do we leverage your appearance to help you do that kind of stuff?
That's super cool. That's awesome. Well, Tanner, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to our podcast to share with us how we can look like men. How is the best way for us to get in contact with you if we want more information?
First of all, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast to kind of
Yeah.
run through a quick hit on this. Best ways to get a hold of me or to interact with me, my two biggest platforms for social media are both Twitter and Instagram. And so both of those are at Tanner Guzy, TANNERGUZY. If you want to, you can go through a really old YouTube channel with a bunch of really good stuff, but I haven't updated in forever. Or you can go pick up The Appearance of Power on both Amazon and Audible.
Perfect. And we'll have all those links in the descriptions for everybody who wants to watch. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure that you like and subscribe and go check out Tanner's information and make sure that you pick up his book, The Appearance of Power, if you want to really step up your game when it comes to style and improving how you convey yourself to the rest of the world. So I want to thank Tanner again, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, wait.
Oh, now you're going to have to edit.
I'm going to have to cut.
You're going to have to cut off at the end.